your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Hey, good evening, horror fans. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Horoscope. After a brief holiday hiatus, we return with a great category for you. This week, we're going to talk about space terror. And Matt, when you think about all the unknown, unexplained, unexplored areas of the world where you can elicit horror from, I think because of its vastness and almost infiniteness, space really has to be at the top of the list for all the things that could be out there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Space horror is a fun topic because aside from all the cool technology and space travel, it also shows that the existential dread of human experience never escapes us, no matter how advanced we become or how far we travel into the cosmos. And like you said, there's things beyond this solar system or within the solar system that we don't understand, or parts of reality we don't understand. So there's a lot of concepts to play with there.
Yeah, if you think about just on our planet, the depths of the ocean and the unexplored jungles, and there's plenty of mystery and unexplored areas of our own world, and then you multiply that by the infinite vastness of stars in the skies and potential solar systems and galaxies and planets. And we haven't talked about this, but is it reasonable to believe in all that vastness that we are the only sentient creature out there? To me, it doesn't seem likely.
It doesn't. There's a book called Probability of One that this mathematician wrote about that, and he said that's actually so many, because there's so many infinite variables out there. There's a probability that we have to have some other life form out there that wouldn't make any other sense. So how we define what that life form is, whether it's an amoeba or an organism that's in water, I mean, there has to be something else out there. It's just H2O makes water. So, I mean, those elements have to exist on other planets. So there has to be some kind of primordial soup that exists on some planet that got started, and we just haven't been able to find it yet.
Yeah. Or they haven't been able to find us. Or maybe they have, if you look at all the reports of UFOs that the government's been releasing.
Or there's just not enough time, if there's cataclysmic events on a planet every 10,000 years, there might not be enough time for them to get advanced enough, just like we probably had the same situation here.
Yep. And if you take the category and you look at all if you're a creator of fiction or a creator of movies or something make believe, it is of the widest open blank palette you could ask for to build your own world, because nobody can tell you it's wrong.
Yeah, no one's going to say, hey, that doesn't make sense. You're like, well, first of all, let's look at where we're starting at. Yeah.
If you're writing a story about a serial killer probing downtown Paris and you get your facts about downtown Paris wrong, people are going to be like, oh, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Right. Well, these facts you're creating from scratch and nobody can dispute them. So it's really wide open.
Yeah. You can get as H.P. Lovecraft as you want and just create all these monsters and ghouls and like all these different terrains and different types of planets with different rules.
Well, one of the things we do on this program that I enjoy is that we typically steer away from not always, but we like to go to some of the unknown, the lesser known, maybe the hidden gems, and not always, the obvious choice for a particular category.
It's too easy to do that. Yeah.
In this particular category, we had to go with the obvious choice because we're going to start with 1979's Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. And the reason we have to start there is pre-Alien, you have 50s goofy sci-fi. There's some good movies in there, sure. Thing from Another Planet, Creature from Another World.
The Mars Attacks style Martians. Yeah.
But the tone is very, very different. Alien is the pure definition of terror in space, and everything that's come after that is in its shadow.
Yeah, or pay some kind of homage to it. It's one of all the genres, there's always a movie that defines a genre. I think Alien defines the space horror genre more than any other movie defines any other genre.
I agree. The only argument I could even come close to making is The Exorcist defining possession.
Yeah, that would be a good contender right there. Probably those two. Yeah.
But slashers. There's a ton of different ones that say they were the first slasher. It is, if you think space horror, you think about Alien in 1979.
Absolutely.
And so obviously I've seen this movie dozens of times. For this particular project, I watched the director's cut Blu-ray, and I got to tell you, it was spectacularly beautiful.
Yeah,
it would look better than some 4K shows that I've watched. It was just so beautifully done.
I'm a little jealous. I wish I did see that. I haven't seen it in 4K yet on a Blu-ray.
Well, so Blu-ray, it wasn't 4K. It just was so stunningly visually striking that it seemed 4K quality. But
it still holds up, because I know The Thing did. I watched the Blu-ray 4K with the Thing, and I was like, this movie looks like it was made today.
One of the notes I absolutely made was, if you remove the computer screens and terminals and the glitchy dot matrix sounding computer noises.
I have that in my notes. There's no user interfaces for some reason, but
if you remove that and you think about the infancy of computer technology in 1979, every single other piece of this movie could absolutely be made today, and the quality holds up at outstanding levels.
And to another point on that, the Alien, this movie created, not an entire genre, but entire lore, entire mythology, where they're still making these movies to this day. And I don't mean that in like a Fast and Furious way, where it's like, oh, great, another one. Like, the lore still continues. They've built upon the universe of Alien, and they even make comic books of it. So I mean, it was this movie like generated an entire like franchise.
Comic books, video games, crossovers, action figures, the
Halloween costumes. It's part of Halloween lore.
Yeah, it's endless. And like I said before, to me, every other space movie since that dabbles in the space horror area owes a great debt, and definitely borrows some of the functionality of this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, most people know the story, but we're going to walk through it real quick. We start with the Nostromo, which is a great name, but it's a commercial tow vehicle with a crew of 7, and they're awakened by the ship's computer, which is dubbed Mother, and they're awakened from status to investigate a distress call in a nearby moon. So they go to investigate. It's rocky terrain. When they land, it damages the hull of their shuttle vessel.
Yeah. And they're not happy about this. They're actually just contracted. They're just moving cargo. They're truck drivers for all intents and purposes.
Exactly.
They're moving cargo, and like, wait, why did we wake up? And like, well, it's part of our contract where if we find some kind of alien life form, we're supposed to investigate it. And they're like, we don't remember signing that. Like, well, it's part of your contract. Yeah. So like, all right, if you guys want to get paid, we got to go look. We just got to go check it out. It's a distress signal. We're supposed to.
And the workers are squabbling about their shares and their pay.
Yeah. And it's typical driver stuff.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So this rocky terrain damages the hull of their shuttle vessel, and we see Captain Dallas, Kane, and Lambert. They go out to investigate the source of this signal, and we see this huge horseshoe-shaped ship that is done with a massive scope, and it's something that is revisited many years later in the Prometheus movie. But the design of that ship is spectacular for any time, but for 1979 particularly.
It's impressive. Yeah, that there was it was large scope that they had for creating all of this.
I was reading a little tidbit about when the characters got out of the shuttle vessel. They wanted the vessel to appear large, so they built basically a leg, to create that illusion you're standing next to the leg.
Yes, yeah.
And Ridley Scott wasn't happy. He thought the actors looked too big next to this fake leg of the ship, so he had his a son and 2 sons of the cinematographer put on smaller spacesuits and stood there to add more scope to
small.
They wanted to be even smaller.
I love that. I love that that tenacity of directors who are like, it's not enough. We got to make it smaller. Yeah.
And the thing I thought of it is for a movie that's so polished that dabbles in space and technology, you still got some ground level creative filmmaking taking place. Like how do we make this look even more spectacular?
Yeah, this was, the pre-green screen era. This was 1979. They had to do everything, as much of practical stuff as they could. And that actually adds to the film's value.
For sure. Inside the ship, they find a what appears to be a control room, and there is a giant skeleton in what looks like a captain's chair.
20 feet tall, looks like some other world. Like, what kind of being is this?
Yeah. It looks somewhat human, but just
humanoid.
Again, the scale, the size.
It looks like a Titan god from a Greek mythology or something. He's like holding some kind of like turret gun, or it could be a telescope. We don't know. We don't know what it is. It's all mystery. Yeah,
and it's purposely mysterious and adds to it, like you said. They do notice that the ribs on this giant skeleton have burst outward from the chest, which is a cool foreshadowing. Kane, the character, climbs down in this cave-like massive cavern within the ship, and there's a huge room with hundreds of egg-like pods, and the whole ship seems wet and gooey, and the eggs are like leathery reptilian.
Yeah.
And he's holding one, and in one of the famous scenes, in a great jump scare, because it's not just a jump scare, it's an actual function, and actually something happens in the movie. A creature bursts out of that egg, smashes through his face mask, and attaches to his face.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's just one of the goopy scenes they come across. Like, it's just unnecessarily oozing, like it's getting ready to burst. You can kind of see something swimming around there like an octopus, and you're like, oh no.
yeah, what's happening here?
Yeah, don't go near that thing.
Meanwhile,
but then you see there's like a field of them too. Yeah. So that's kind of more horrifying, like in retrospect, after you see what that one does.
Yeah, just massive. Yeah. Back on the ship, Ripley has deciphered the message that they were receiving, and figured out it's not an SOS, but is a warning, basically saying to stay away. But they're already there. Well, the search party comes back from the ship, and they have Kane with this creature attached to its face. And due to containment protocol for this unknown organism, Ripley won't let him in. She's in charge of the ship with the captain being out. And she's like, no, I cannot let you in.
We'll put everyone else in danger. Yeah.
And she's like, the protocol. It's, we got to wait 24 hours or whatever. And the medical officer, Ash, overrides her decision and opens the door anyways. And so they're in.
And Ash, he's the senior, well, not the senior, he's the only medical officer. And I guess that they have an argument about it later. Ripley asked Dallas, who's the captain's like, why did you let him in? Like, why did you you're putting us all in danger? And he's like, well, I have orders to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be the captain of the ship. And I'm told that he's supposed to do what he's supposed to do as the science advisor. And I'm supposed to let him just do it. So he has a job and I have a job and you have a job and your job is to listen to me. And that's what we're doing. And like, they have this hierarchy, like falling, like that's how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. This creature, now we move to the medical bay, and this creature kind of looks like a crab with multiple legs, and it's stuck to the face. It's something we've, grown now to know as a face hugger. But Kane is just comatose with this thing attached to him. And they try prying it off, and they can't find any way to get it off. And they actually cut or break one of its legs, one of its crab-like legs, and the acid starts dripping out. And the acid falls to the floor and burns through the floor. And I thought this was a cool scene. They go running down, like almost comically, and this acid just keeps burning through level after level after level, and it's going to breach the hull of the ship.
Yeah. So they're running down to see how far it goes.
Yeah, and finally it stops. It burns itself out, but burns through several floors.
Yeah, and the one guy's like, the only thing that does this is molecular acid in a lab. Like, well, what is this? This isn't something you see in nature.
Yeah, which is another cool, they built such a great story on this.
Yeah.
Ripley does confront Ash on why he disobeyed her and overrode the policy. And he's like, oh, it's captain's orders. Captain was outside saying, let us in, which is a pretty weak excuse if you have those protocols in place.
Yeah, well, at one point I was thinking, I was like, well, this is a lot of this movie is an allegory to corporate ethics. That's what this came down to. They're a corporation. They're just a corporation. They're truck drivers.
And it's funny, they touch on that a lot more in the sequel. It kind of opens up with, the corporation and their point of view, and they go right into that road that was clearly paved right here for them.
Yeah.
They go back into the sick bay, and the face hugger is gone. And they start looking for it, and finally it just falls from the ceiling dead, just like a husk. At this point, the hull is repaired, and they're going to journey back to the main ship and head home. And with the face hugger gone from his face, a little while later, Kane just wakes up and feels no real effects of what happened. He's got a little bit of memory loss, but basically feels fine.
What's up, guys? He's like, I'm hungry.
Yeah. The crew sits down to have dinner together, and Kane starts to feel sick.
He gets food poisoning.
Yeah, something like that. He starts spasming and convulsing, and he lies down on a table. And in one of the most famous scenes in all of horror, this is where the small alien bursts through from his chest and goes scurrying off. And one of my favorite things about this scene, it's a wonderfully done scene.
Yes. It's iconic.
The group, the actors knew that the creature was going to burst through from the chest. But they did not know that with the burst, there was going to be blood flying in every direction.
Oh, so they got the good. Yeah,
so
they got splattered.
Many of them are splattered, and you hear the one woman who actually plays Lambert, kind of a love interest of Kane's. Her reaction is the one you hear famously in the background. She freaks out, and that's real.
Oh, that's really cool. I love that. I love when directors try to like get those reactions out of the actors by setting certain things up. Like we saw that in Overlord when that opening scene where they actually put them in like a real plane. Like it wasn't in the sky; it was obviously in a studio, but they had like the real pyrotechnics right there to get the reactions.
Yeah. Yeah, and they kept the Pennywise makeup from the kids in It.
Yes,
things
and they
like
get
that.
to interact with them until that first scene. So that was really the kids screaming.
Yeah, I agree. That stuff like that is just next level brilliant in my opinion.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah.
So that I love that about that scene, that so many of those reactions are genuine. But this little creature that bursts out goes skittering away, and like everyone wants to reach for it, and of course Ash like, oh no, don't hurt it, which makes no sense.
He goes. That one tech he wants to kill it, and he's like, he grabs his arm. He's like, no, don't, no.
So they end up launching Kane's dead body into space. Obviously, he's
which that was another thing I questioned about. Like, is that how we do it in the future? Like, wouldn't that create like a potential? Now they're a corporation worried about ethics, right? So like, wouldn't that potentially hit another planet or like hit another spaceship somewhere down the line and cause like more damage? Like that's debris. Like you're littering into space. Wouldn't they have littering. To like, yeah. But like, wouldn't there be some kind of like thing where they could burn it on the ship and just like burn it up?
Well, think of how many hundreds of years we've littered our oceans thinking that it was vast and endless. And when we know that not to be true, I imagine
we don't do it with dead bodies.
There's some dead bodies in the ocean. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it was a biological thing where they didn't want, whatever was in his body. Maybe more are going to burst out. Who knows? Yeah, I always attribute it's like ancient tribes, like they like put like a person on a canoe and set them out, like that'd be a funeral. Like maybe that's like the equivalent to that, like space canoe gone.
The space canoe, yeah.
Ripley. Sorry.
No.
So everyone's searching for the creature, and in some really tense moments and some really well shot, edge of your seat kind of stuff, we find Jones the cat instead. And it was kind of like a fake, jump scare for a minute. But then Brett finds a shedded skin and almost like a snake skin, only on a larger scale.
Yeah, these guys are doing a search, by the way, with no PPE. So this guy goes and picks up alien skin with no gloves on.
No, nothing.
I was having a blast nitpicking at this for fun.
Well, right. I haven't even, the term PPE. I don't even know if that had been used in 1979.
Yeah, right.
So he finds the shedded skin and turns to encounter a nearly full-grown alien, larger than a man, with the famous elongated head and the mouth inside of a mouth, and
the drooling acid coming down his mouth. Yeah.
and
like he makes
Brett.
this makes the searing screech as if like the sound of a hose is loose, and like all the hoses in the background. So one thing they did really well in this movie that I think is absolutely like brilliant. The entire environment kind of looks like the alien itself. So at no point do you ever think it could be there, it couldn't be there. You know, like there's always like black hoses everywhere, and like there's like these like smooth black leathery surfaces on the wall that kind of look like it's skin and head, and every scene has that.
Yeah, and the biomechanical design of the creature blends in perfectly, which will come into play later here for sure.
Yeah.
So Brett got attacked. The group decides their best option is to use fire on it, and Captain Dallas goes into the air vents looking to track it. And there's this fantastic tense scene where they're tracking the life form on like a digital reader, and it's moving in unison with Dallas. And then he stops and it's getting closer. And then it's like, they're like, it's right on top of you. And it's very edited very well. It's cut very well. It's very tense.
Yeah.
And he doesn't see the alien at all until the last second. And it's at that point, it's just
jumps out. Yeah. It's the jump scare. Yeah.
So Dallas has now been attacked. Ripley is in charge now.
Yep. Captain's gone. So she's the new captain.
And one of the things, another one of my favorite stories about this movie is the character Ripley was not written male or female. It was in the script. It was just a character. And Sigourney Weaver obviously famously nailed the tryout and became this iconic female empowerment figure.
Yeah,
particularly into the second movie where she just becomes badass. But I just think it's really cool that this iconic female character wasn't even written that way. She just owned it.
I think it just makes it that much better. Instead of them trying to like intentionally do it, like it just this is just how it happened. Here's this great character, and Sigourney Weaver just nails it. And it's like, yes,
yep, perfect. Yeah, it's when it's organic like that, you just
exactly
not forced.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So now that she's in charge, she goes to sit down and talk to Mother, and she does some research and finds out they have a new directive to bring the alien life form back to Earth, and all other objectives are overridden and forgotten, and the crew is expendable. As she gets this information, Ash confronts her, and we find out he was following that directive all along.
Yeah.
And he starts choking her, and there's this big battle scene.
Yeah, and right before that, he's right as they're confronting each other, he starts to like sweat this like milky substance.
Yes, very, very creepy. And
as a kid, it freaked me out. I was like, oh,
yeah, it's just weird. It's just unexpected. But while he's choking her, Parker comes in and saves her, and he starts bashing him in a extremely violent manner. And we discover that he is an android.
Yeah. He hits him over the head, and his neck and shoulders go.
Yeah, and his wires and tubes and all of his stuff comes out, and it's a very violent and great scene where he's just now mashing this android, and it's fake flesh, and it's
mechanical wires
violent,
sticking out everywhere. Yeah,
you probably couldn't do this scene if Ash was a real human, because it's over the top.
Right. Yeah. He mangles him more and tears his entire body and torso apart, and heads ripping off and neck and everything. Yeah. If they had inserted this scene and it was red blood instead of the white milky stuff, this movie would have been NC-17. We can't show this.
Yeah. He's pulling out hoses and tubes
like if they were intestines. Yeah.
So it was a great scene. Really, it's a good scene.
Yeah.
Once he's completely debilitated, they hook power back up to his head to get some answers from him,
Yeah.
And they tell him, he says, yeah, he's supposed to bring back that life form. The corporation wants it no matter what. And they burn him up.
Yeah. And he says something like, I admire its ability to survive without being clogged by morality. And I'm like, you mean like animals?
Yeah.
We have those on Earth.
Yeah, like the defense mechanism of the acid blood. Like, how do you attack something with acid blood? You can't.
Yeah.
You kill it kills you.
Yeah. Yeah. And they say he's starting to give the inclination that maybe this was like genetically engineered.
Yeah.
Because he's like, it's perfect in its simplicity. So it's like, well, what would design that,
Yeah, right. So the remaining group decides that they're going to get in the shuttle and blow up the ship to kill the alien. As they're gathering and getting their supplies ready to do this, Parker and Lambert are both attacked by the creature, preventing them from making it to the escape pod. So Ripley is the only one left, and Jones the cat. So she sets the self-destruct mechanism on the ship, and she's got 10 minutes. And she encounters Dallas's body and Brett's body, and they're cocooned for use by the alien, either to implant more or just to grow more. That's how it breeds.
Yeah, some kind of like spider-like tendency that has or something. It's weird.
And so she burns them to release them from the hell they're in. And on the way back, with the timer going off, the alien blocks her path back to the shuttle. So she has second thoughts and figuring, she doesn't want to blow up in space. So she goes back to try to cancel the self-destruct, but it's too late. There's a no turning back point that she doesn't make it for.
Yeah.
So
every self-destruct in every movie has that problem.
Yes.
There's no e-stop.
5 minutes to get back and get to the shuttle before the whole thing blows. And so she runs back. She's got Jones the cat, and this time her path isn't blocked. She gets there, and they narrowly get away in time. In fact, when the Nostromo explodes, it really explodes. It explodes like the Death Star or something. It's a massive explosion.
Yeah.
Shock waves and like
a
nuclear
planet,
mushroom circle
exploded. everything over the top. I loved it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it rattled the escape pod.
Yeah.
But she gets away. So you think kind of the movie's over at this point. She's prepping her and Jones the cat for stasis when she sees the alien hidden in the escape pod, and it's behind some stuff, just like you talked about, the biomechanical nature of it. It kind of blends in. It's hard to see at first.
And you're squinting. You're like, wait a second. Is it there? And
really, the oblong head is the only thing that gives it away and is out of place.
And then they shoot away and then shoot back, and there's 3 other oblong looking like tubes, and you're like, wait a second, because there's like the ship, you know what I mean? Like but it's meant to blend in with its environment. That's kind of what they say earlier in the movie. That's what Ash had said. This thing's really prepared to blend in with its environment. It's replacing its cells with like a silica something, so he's kind of like saying it's replacing its cells to blend in with this environment.
Yeah. So Ripley sees the alien, but the alien's still kind of hiding. So she sneakily steps into a spacesuit that's right next to her, gets it all enclosed, and then she turns on, I don't know if it's steam or gas, but she starts blasting the area where the alien is, causing it to screech and kind of jump out of its hiding spot. But as it comes towards her, she opens the airlock, sucking the alien out into space. As it flies out the door, it grabs a hold of the door and won't let go with its powerful alien arms. She takes out a grappling hook gun and shoots it in the chest, which knocks it loose, but then the gun is stuck in the door. So the alien is actually tethered to the ship, flapping around in space.
Yeah.
At this point, it tries to climb towards an exhaust portal. Yeah. But Ripley fires up the engine and sends it tumbling off into space. And we don't see it die. It just tumbles away.
They have a shot where it's like the propulsion is coming down in the shaft, in the propulsion shaft, right on the alien, and it's not melting or anything. It's just kind of like fighting it off. It's like, as this, like, maybe fire doesn't even kill this thing. Like, it's just kind of the propulsion itself is kind of pushing it away.
Yeah. So we didn't kill it, but we did see it drift off into space, at least
Got rid
away
of it.
from
Yeah.
Ripley and Jones the cat.
Yeah.
So they prep and they go into status, and that's the end of the movie. She makes a
That's the
final
end of it.
log recording the activity of the Nostromo, and basically that's right where the sequel picks up. And this
Yeah.
movie is so good that it actually has one of the sequels that is almost as good as the original.
Yeah, yeah. It's a different kind of movie. I'll say I would say Alien 1 is a horror movie, and I'd say Aliens is more of an action movie.
100%.
Yeah.
Exactly the way I was going to describe them. In fact, I was reading some of the reviews. It's always funny to look back on these classic movies and see these brilliant reviewers who missed the boat at the beginning.
Yeah.
I saw
a lot.
I saw this movie labeled when it came out by a reviewer as it's really a haunted house movie. It just happens to be in space.
Well, that's interesting.
And it's a great analogy because I recently saw The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which is a chapter from Bram Stoker's Dracula. The movie focused just on that single chapter of the ship voyage from Romania to London.
Oh, okay.
And that movie was Alien on a ship. The
same setup, right?
It was the same setup. It's this mysterious, deadly creature hidden in the shadows. It was Alien on an old sea vessel. And so not only did Alien create a template for space horror, but it really is a template for a lot of horror.
Well, you could say haunted ship, right? That's a whole episode we should probably cover is haunted ship. We can't do Alien, right? But we got to do a haunted ship, because a ship could be space or it could be ocean. Because every time you're talking about a fleet and like ocean and space, it's always the Navy. Like in Star Trek, that's the Navy. They're a fleet, right? So they're a commander and admiral and all that. So yeah, it could be either space or it could be in the ocean.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, and again, we don't always go for the obvious, but this movie is so iconic, so defines the genre that we had to cover it, and it holds up. Doesn't matter how old it is. It's a near perfect movie.
I agree 100%. Still is. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay. Our second film for this topic is from 1997, and the film is Event Horizon, directed by Paul Anderson. And this movie is, what I like about this movie is, space terror sounds like you're going to do Alien and then a bunch of copies of Alien. And you certainly could do that because there's 100 of them out there.
Right.
But this movie's different, and it's definitely terror in space, but it comes at it from a different perspective, and I like that.
Yeah, Paul Anderson said he described it as cosmic and existential dread, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, and I read a review of this that said it was like Hellraiser in space, which is another cool way of looking at it.
Yeah, he actually said that I was reading an interview from Paul Anderson. He said what they did was they wanted the ship to look very gothic. They wanted a gothic feel for the movie, so they took a 3D model of the cathedral in Notre Dame, and they took all the bits and pieces from that, and they took the parts of the cathedral of Notre Dame and made the ship try to look like that. So lots of like design of the ship is made from the cathedral of Notre Dame.
Now I can explain to you how simple of a person I am in one statement. My notes say the ship looks like a lawn chart. That backyard game where when I was a kid,
long dart,
it had a spike on the end, and you had to make sure you knew where they were so you didn't kill somebody. And now they're just a ball. But I thought the ship looked like that ball lawn chart that you threw.
Yeah. Well, I always thought that the ship, with how skinny it was in the middle, was impractical. It would probably snap at some point. It just never looked practical to me, but it still looked cool.
It's a cool look, yeah. So the movie starts in 2040, which is odd to think that's less than 17 years away.
Yeah.
but it is. The ship called the Event Horizon disappears in 2040. It was exploring the outer boundaries of the solar system. In 2047, our tale actually begins. The Lewis and Clark is a search and rescue ship, and they receive an alert, which wakes them all out of their sleep tank. And Dr. Weir wakes up from a night. He has a nightmare.
Which I thought actually he had an interesting name because it's one letter away from weird. So it's just Weir, it's a Dr. Weird, but it was just weird.
Yeah. And he gets weird.
Yeah.
So he tells the crew that they're rescuing the Event Horizon, that it disappeared 7 years ago. And he tells them how it creates a gateway by folding space and time, and then it moves faster than light. And he uses a piece of paper and shows like getting from one end to the other, and they say, well, shortest a straight line. He folds the paper and he says, this actually creates both places being in the same place at once.
And then to this day, that's everything I know about warp speed.
Yeah, there you go.
It's actually how I still think of it. I don't even know if it's true.
I have an interesting note right here. So he explains how it all works, and then he finds out he was the designer of the ship. Mm-hmm. They have a transmission from the ship that they've intercepted when all you can hear is screaming and a guy yelling something in Latin. And one of the guys says, I think that means save me. And my note says, it's crazy to me that they can fold the space-time continuum, but can't translate Latin properly. Like they can't use the Google translator and
right.
get this correct because
they have to rely on the one guy with esoteric knowledge from that, who knows how he learned it. Yeah. And they're all just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he must be right. We have no idea what it means. And we're
this guy's talking about, this guy's talking about gravitons.
So yeah, they get to it. The Event Horizon, like I said, I thought it looked like a giant lawn chart with the the tail end here, and then a skinny middle, and then a kind of a bulbous front.
Yeah.
So they scan this bulbous lawn chart looking for life forms and to see what they can discover. And it's somewhere on one of the outer moons of Neptune is where they discover the vessel.
3 billion clicks away from the nearest post.
Yeah, it's a lot of clicks.
Yeah.
They discover trace life forms, but scattered and unable to pinpoint. Which, whenever a movie does something that doesn't make sense, I find it intriguing.
Yeah, they're scanning everything. The whole ship has life forms, but they can't pinpoint it, and they show like a visual on it where it's just the whole thing's lighting up. Yeah.
So it's like, what is this? This is different.
Yeah.
So they board the ship and they find it frozen. The gravity drive is off, so things are just floating around. At one point, a corpse just floats by, and when they're checking,
liquid coolant balls just kind of floating in the air.
Yeah. When they're checking, the OneDrive, the magic part of this ship that allows it to jump around, turns on. It activates, and it opens up like this liquid portal and sucks a character called Justin into it, and also creates a small explosion which damages the Lewis and Clark, and forces everyone to come over to the Event Horizon, except a couple people are sent out to go work on.
They're going to weld it shut. They're going to weld. There's like a 7-meter like slash, so they have 2 people out there, like that Cooper and Smith. They're going to go out there and fix it and weld it. They've got 20 hours to do this job, so they've got 20 hours of oxygen to get on Event Horizon, get a game plan, and get back on the ship and leave.
Yeah, and it's funny, you talk about Alien creating these, everybody's got to go fix the hull.
Yeah.
We're always going to be held up fixing the hull somewhere.
Yeah.
and it plays out here. So we see Justin emerge from this liquid portal that he went through, and he's alive, but he's like catatonic.
Yeah.
And he's just wandering around, and he actually attempts to commit suicide by decompressing himself and just floating out of the ship
right into the airlock. Yeah.
So they they get in, they save him, they stop him from doing this, and they have to put him in stasis to keep him under control till they can find something else.
Yeah, they barely save him, so he has all these injuries. He's bleeding from his eyes and his lungs, like because he opened up the latch and they barely saved him, but he had just sustained injuries. So now they've got to put him in the medical bay again.
Yeah, yeah, and the crew is all starting to have these horrible hallucinations. You get to see it from a couple of different characters' perspective. The nightmares that the living awake nightmares that they're experiencing, and they're just awful.
And Dr. Weir is just telling everyone, you guys are just having hallucinations. There's gravity waves that are creating these weird distortions of light bending. That's all it is.
Yep. Except he's having them too.
Yeah, but he won't admit it.
Yeah. Smith and Cooper, like you said, they're outside. They're repairing the hull. And the group, as they're trying to figure out what's going on in the ship, they discover a video recording of the events taking place on the ship. And they see a video of what is basically a sex and death orgy. Shortly after the one drive is engaged, all the people on the ship are fornicating and mutilating each other, and it's
eating each other and pulling each other's eyes out and having sex with each other at the same time. Yeah, I wrote it was just an orgy of pain and death.
I wrote sex and death orgy. So yeah. The video concludes with the captain of the ship holding his own eyeballs and speaking the Latin phrase that they've now managed to correctly translate to save yourself from hell. Big difference from what that guy first thought.
Right. Yeah. It's a completely, and it's interesting when they show the very beginning of the last log. That's what they looked at. And it shows the last log right before like all of this happened. And the commander, Fleck or whatever his name is, he says something in Latin, which means farewell. And then 3 seconds go by on the tape, and then it instantly like goes to all this carnage. So it's almost like they were teleported somewhere, and there was almost no time lapse, and it started happening.
Yeah, which is the cool kind of
story
of this whole
the mystery
movie.
of it. Yeah, like where did it go? How did 3 seconds go by and all this started happening? Yeah.
So the Lewis and Clark is fixed. They get it repaired, and Captain Miller wants to blow up the Event Horizon as they leave. Like, let's blow this thing and get out of here. But Dr. Weir wants to rescue the ship he built.
He's become obsessed. He's like, no, we're not leaving the ship. Like, he's becoming this obsessed mad scientist.
Yeah, and he gets worse as it goes. One of the characters, Weir, a female, is following her son, and Peters rather, and she is lured to death by following this hallucination. And Dr. Weir follows her. He ends up going completely mad and gouging his own eyes out.
Yeah, he's having hallucinations of seeing his wife that committed suicide, and they show it, and like he like has to sit right next to her as she's doing it, and he's freaking out.
He basically has become possessed by the evil ship.
Yeah. Almost kind of like Jack Torrance in The Shining kind of thing. They've slowly like kind of come in on him and slowly taken over his mind throughout the whole story.
Yeah, he once he's possessed, he doesn't want anybody to leave, so he blows up the Lewis and Clark, and this kills Smith, and it knocks Cooper just out into space.
Yeah,
he just goes floating away.
Yeah.
Weir then kills a character named DJ. He splits him completely open, and in one of the iconic shots of this movie, leaves him, hanging, spread eagle, just gutted
right over the bed with his guts all hanging out, and he's got all these all these hooks in him that like have everything. It was very Hellraiser-ish.
Yeah, very. Yeah. It also reminded me of the scene in Silence of the Lambs. With the where the guard is strung up in the cell when Dr. Lecter escapes.
Yeah.
But you hate to call something like that beautiful, but it's kind of a beautifully constructed
right.
image.
I agree. Yeah.
So Captain Miller is going to kill Weir. He realizes that Weir is now causing all this chaos, and the ship went into a dimension of chaos and evil
Yeah.
and came back sentient.
Yeah.
And now
And
it's
and he's
possessed.
like, we don't need eyes where we're going. You don't need eyes to see where we're gonna go. Yeah. He's very,
Yeah.
very, very demonic, and his eyes are all slashed up.
It's almost like, it reminds me of like a Lucio Fulci movie, where you're positioned over one of the seven gates of hell, and
Yeah.
this could happen in a uh, uh, you know a bordello in Louisiana, or it could happen in a cemetery in Italy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have passage to something you shouldn't be seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I really like that theme, by the way.
And the fact that it's being done from space is kind of cool. And it's like, well, did they go to actual hell?
Right, right. Or is it just some other insane, like what other dimension are they talking about? They never specify that, which is part of the intrigue of the movie, is you never really know.
It's a dimension of chaos and evil.
That's all they say, right?
Yeah.
They never say it was actually hell. They never even use that word. They don't use the word demon. They just say another dimension. Like what, like the unlocking of this technology. Like put humanity in a situation that they weren't ready for. They crossed some line that they weren't supposed to cross.
And we talked about when we had a topic called terrifying technology, where people push things beyond the realm of where they should.
Yeah.
And usually with bad results. And this kind of would fit into that category as well.
100%. I had actually thought about this, but there was so many other movies. It was hard, but I remember that.
So Cooper, who got blown off into space, he uses the oxygen tanks to push himself and propel himself back to the event horizon. And when he appears in the window of the bridge, Weir shoots at him, shattering the window, and gets sucked out, which is like just such a dumb thing to do. This guy invented this, this gravity drive, and he shoots out the window of the ship. It's just dumb.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like a throwback to Alien, where they throw like the hook in the window, and like it kind of like shoots the alien out.
Yeah.
But that was a smart one in Alien. I don't know about this.
Yeah. So Weir, who has become our basically our representation of the evil of the ship, he's sucked out and he's gone.
Yeah. But you know what? It was a universe of that camp was chaos, right? So it's almost like he didn't need a plan. He didn't care. He's like, I'm just going to take this whole thing down.
Yeah. Chaos is unpredictable.
I'll destroy this vessel body that I inhabited, and I'll just go exist somewhere else. I don't even care.
And Dr. Weir was played by Sam Neill, who is outstanding for his use of facial expressions.
Yeah.
You think about him, famously protecting the kids in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
But when he turns those expressions and he's playing evil.
Yeah.
Well, he does it really well.
He does it really well. He did really well in this movie. Yeah. He starts off as this this gleeful, boisterous doctor, like, guys, they created this thing, and he's like so happy to talk about it with everyone. He's like, all right, I'll put it in layman's terms, and he's saying all this stuff, and everyone's like, slow down. And he's like, all right, I get excited about it. It's my ship, it's my baby, I love this thing. And then goes from that character to slowly becoming this like really evil character, and then transforms into this demonic character. And I thought he does it perfectly.
And after he gouged his eyes out, he's running around with just like ripped scar, eye holes, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So now he's sucked out, and so they're going to seal off that area, and they're going to blow the ship into sections and use the forward section as a lifeboat to get out of there. And Captain Miller is attacked by a hallucination that turns into Weir. Like you said, nothing makes sense. So Weir is actually gone, but this hallucination turns into Weir, and he touches him, and he shows him scenes of torture and pain and depravity. Yeah. And it just, again, that dimension of chaos and evil, and he wants to open it and get back there.
Yeah, and there was actually they wanted to do Paramount wanted to do an extended director's cut where they were going to make it more gruesome, and there was footage where they were going to extend all that stuff, like the original transmission that came through, and like that scene where they were just showing like Lawrence Fishburne, Captain Miller, when they were showing him like the premonitions of all that stuff. They wanted to extend all that and have a director's cut. And so Paul Anderson went back to the studio where they filmed everything, and he was trying to get the footage, and they had gotten rid of it because it didn't do well enough in the box office. So they just got rid of the extra footage. So we'll never get the director's cut.
Shame.
Yeah, they wanted to though. Oh.
So at this point, Captain Miller is beaten. He's seen the awfulness. He's seen the worst things he's ever seen through the hallucinations. So he knows he's done for. He triggers the explosion to separate the ship into two parts. And at this point, the drive opens, sucking the stern section into the black hole. So if Captain Miller's still alive, he's gone to that place.
Yeah.
Which I guess would make an interesting sequel.
Yeah. Or who knows? Yeah, they could have. They never did.
Two characters, Stark and Cooper. Justin, who had gone mad earlier, is still in stasis. Stark and Cooper go into stasis, and they wait for rescue. Yeah. And
you know what I was going to say? I thought it was really cool what Captain Miller does. He actually kind of sacrifices himself by going into that dimension to save everyone, because he's kind of trying to atone for his hallucination of leaving a man behind he did years ago, and that haunts him. And he kind of, instead of trying to fight it, he says, okay, I have to take atonement for this. I realize how much it's haunting me, that this ship's using it against me. And he realized he's carried that with him for years. And he says, so I'm going to sacrifice my life for the rest of this crew.
Yeah, I'm saving these guys.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really good story point.
And that was Lawrence Fishburne, who is also very, very accomplished, very good actor.
Yeah.
So he saved those three characters. 72 days later, rescue group shows up, and there's another nightmare scenario where the guy waking up experiences something awful, but then
it's Stark. It's the girl, the blonde girl. She wakes up and she thinks they're rescuing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. She thinks that a rescue crew's coming in there. He's like, relax, everyone's fine. And the hood opens, and it's Dr. Weir, and he's all slashed up, and he's like, "You're like, we have them." And then she wakes up, and it was all a hallucination.
Yeah, and then it ends. So the group is still having nightmares and hallucinations, and you wonder if they can, it doesn't conclude, but can they ever be free from touching so close to madness?
Well, or I thought it was, could have went both ways. Was that ship still haunted? Like maybe they're not safe, right? Like maybe like that, right. Like was it a nightmare, or it's like the door's shut, and it's like, well, was that entity still on the Lewis and Clark, or on that? I'm sorry, the lifeboat. It was on the lifeboat, because the lifeboat was part of the entire was entire thing. So the whole thing, when they showed the original scan, said the whole thing was showing life forms.
Right.
So when that lifeboat took off, it still had to have that entity on it. So like maybe they're drifting out in space 7 years later. It's like, you're still not safe. This thing still exists, and now it's going to go infect whoever else comes on it.
It like leaves it very open-ended.
Yeah.
And again, it's basically like by messing with this technology, we sent the ship to hell and back.
Yeah.
It is kind of, it's almost like you could do this movie with similar themes and not be in space, but doing it in space was really cool.
It was very unique. Yeah.
If it is hell, and like you said, they never call it such, but it takes the concept of that you learn as a kid, heaven is up and hell is down, and it takes it, and it's just adds a dimensional space,
another geographical dimension to it. Yeah, like where it's another dimension that exists.
Yeah, which was cool and unique. So that's the thing I liked about this movie. It was not a horror film where there's something out there that's going to bite you, eat you, take its natural course of living.
Right.
It's totally this obscure,
they opened a dimension, and it's taken over the ship, and they have no idea how. They don't know how to stop it. At no point do they know how to know where it came from. There's no answers given. They just blow up the ship and try to run. That's it.
Yeah, there's no way to fight it.
No, it's all in their head. Like Captain Miller says, like, this thing is using our own thoughts and fears against us. Like we're seeing these hallucinations based off of our fears,
which is terrifying.
Yeah, because you can't escape it. It's an existential dread, right? No matter how far in and life society goes with technology, there's that certain dread that people will always have and that you can encounter no matter where you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had seen this movie only once before and a long time ago,
Well, yeah.
and I didn't remember a lot of it. So it was very good to revisit. And again, most of the space horror movies are very derivative of Alien, and this one really tried to do something unique and different. And I thought that was cool, and I thought it was a good thing to bring to the subject tonight because of that difference.
Yeah, using technology to open up a portal to another dimension that unleashes hell on a spaceship far away. It's unique. It's great. I think it's not a classic movie as far as Alien is, but to me, it's kind of a cult classic. You know, like
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not a 10,
Right.
but it's good. It's got good acting, and it tries to be different, which is always gets a nod from us when we look at so many things that are copycats and derivative out there. You try to be unique, and that you at least get a push in the right direction.
And the special effects for the time of when it came out, I think are fantastic. I don't think that's something to skip over with this movie. There have been a lot of 90s movies that look terrible. And this 1997 movie, as far as like the blood and guts and all the scenes they did, like the ship technology actually kind of looked almost on par with Alien. Like it looked good. You kind of believe they're on this like manufacturing type ship, like everything seems concrete and metal and steamy, and like I think it still holds up.
Yeah. Yep. Like you said, not the classic, not the tent pole of this category, but good flick and definitely different. And there's a lot of movies we could visit in this subject because of, like we talked about at the beginning, space is vast and endless, and if you're creating a fictional story, it's really a blank canvas to create whatever you want because no one really knows.
Yeah, exactly. And who knows how many alien invasion movies there were between the 50s and 70s, right? I mean, you had that whole genre, the alien invasion. I mean, it's not space. You could call that space terror.
You could. Yeah, it's definitely
terror from space, right?
Most of them are kind of hokey and kind of funny, and they don't reach the level of terror that Alien changed the game.
Alien changed the game.
Yeah, definitely. So cool subject, and definitely a lot to be afraid of in worlds yet visited and unknown.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you as always for listening. This is the Weekly Horoscope. That's our episode for this week. I'm Jerry. That's Matt. We will be back next week with another topic and 2 new movies, and love to talk to you then. So thanks for listening. Have a good week.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jerry.
Your Weekly Horoscope with Jerry and Matt.